So, hello, and today we're joined by Sall Grover. Sal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. So my name's Sal. I'm Australian. Gosh, how do I even tell the story? You'd think I'd be used to it by now. I created an app exclusively for women, and I got the idea in 2018. We developed it all, or late 2018, developed it all through 2019. We're getting ready to launch at the beginning of 2020. And I woke up actually on the 7th of February. So this coming Friday is my 5-year anniversary of waking up to thousands upon thousands of reviews, messages, emails, everything saying transphobia, you're a turf, bigot. I didn't know that there was an issue. I didn't know that this stuff existed. And so, um, I decided to educate myself. I distinctly remember saying to my mum, who was having a nervous breakdown, I was like, Mum, this is so stupid. It will blow over really
Was she,
quickly.
she in that situation because of what was happening, or was that something that happened before
What?
that your mom had a nervous
No,
breakdown?
I mean, she was just panicking. Like she wasn't having like a literal one. But
Yeah, she was
she was just
stressed.
so anxious and panicking. Like, when it's that wall of hate that hits you,
Yeah,
which you're not expecting. Because we hadn't launched yet. We were still in beta testing. We were on the App Store and Google Play, but we hadn't launched. We hadn't done anything. And so like we were literally cancelled before we'd even left the gate. And so I just started researching it as much as and that's when I start my starting point was basically the TRAs were all saying educate yourself. And I was like, oh, fair point, because I have no idea what any of you are going on about. And I typed in the word turf. I was like, I don't know what this means. That's going to be my starting point. I don't know if I typed it into Google or Twitter, maybe both. I can't remember. But that's when I came across like Ellen Joyce and Graham Linehan, Jane Clay Jones, Julie Bindel, really big UK voices who in 2020 were very much the loudest. And then like thousands of anonymous women. Like now there's many more women who have their sort of names to it. But this is 5 years ago. It was much more anonymous. And I just started reading everything were saying. And for the first few hours, you were reading it going, like, like what? So it can't be
makes you
true.
question everything you know, doesn't it? Like,
Everything. And the
what?
two
Have I
things,
got it wrong?
yeah. And there were two things beyond just the men can be women, like, because that was obviously like the thing that was like just so insane. But the next thing from it, the two things that stood out to me the most were one that they were saying that these men were lesbians. And I was like, I instantly went the implications of that. And then two, the other one was that they were going after Muslim women who were like campaigning to end female genital mutilation. And I was like, why on earth would you attack women for wanting to end that? Uh, I learned that
I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that it
yeah,
targeted Muslim women.
especially in America. And I learned that basically because the legislation for the various genital surgeries that they were advocating for would fall kind of under the same legislation as the female genital mutilation. And so there was this
Right.
crossover. Yeah.
It makes
And
sense, but I'd not heard that.
yeah, and I just went like, I was like, this is madness. So I cross-referenced everything that everyone was saying. And I did. I said to my mum, this will blow over. It's so stupid. Like, we'll just tread water, like because we created this app for women who women could find roommates, and we had lesbian dating and just connection for emotional support. And I mean, there was like over 100 categories. So it's like hard to
Yeah,
rattle them
yeah.
all off. You know, female only Twitter. It was just everything we could think of like a little female in the corner of the internet. And I was like, it will blow over. Everyone will realize how stupid this is. Cut to 5 years later, and I have now been in federal court for 3 years because I got an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint during that treading water time. So the Australian Human Rights Commission complained in January of 2022, citing gender identity discrimination from a man who claims to be a woman, that he had been blocked from using the app. And because I did not settle and just allow him on it. It escalated to federal court. It went to federal court. It was the first case. It's actually the first case in the world in the discrimination law to directly tackle sex versus gender identity. And part of our argument was a constitutional challenge because Australia is in sort of a unique position in the sense that our Sex Discrimination Act is very much ripped from CEDAW, which is the UN Convention of the Elimination of Discrimination for Women, and which is signed by like 189 or 187 countries around the world. And so we're in quite a good position to defend it. And it is a documented biological reality. Anyway, the judgment or decision on that case was that sex is changeable and men can be women. And
which
so
doesn't make sense, but we're expecting that to be the case, weren't we?
I mean, yes. I mean, so we're in the appeal process now, and we have the first case management hearing next week, and then the full appeal will be heard probably in August this year. So, we're about 7 months away from that. But yeah, to answer the question of, I never had an instinct that we would win the first round. My reason was that, I mean, obviously you go in there to win it. It was like my instruction was win this, and like you argue it to win it, and our arguments are correct. Like we know that. But I knew there's two things that was working against us. One was the political climate. It just was zero political appetite for this in Australia. Still, we are working overtime at the moment to try and create it. We're going into a federal election in the next few months. And so both the current Prime Minister and the one who wants the job do not want this on the table. And for the one that's currently the leader, you understand why he doesn't. It's because his government is the one that changed the laws. He didn't personally. It happened before him, but his government is the one who did it. So they don't want to take responsibility for that. But I cannot understand why the other guy won't do it. I think I'm like, you have been given this gift.
Yeah.
On show corruption and stupidity. I'm like, that's sort of quite unique in the world, and you can see how popular it is when politicians actually really double down on this everywhere else. And so, yeah, it's bothering me. But so I can get into that later. But so I knew that we didn't have, so that the political climate was against us and the media, but also the Australian Human Rights Commission. So it started as an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, and then they intervened in the case as amicus curiae, which is friend of the court, and they're there to interpret the law. Completely normal in many cases. They have a statutory right to be able to do it. It's fine. And in many cases, it can be a very good thing. In this case, the Sex Discrimination Commission, which is a commission within the Australian Human Rights Commission, which is the one who is directly involved in this, they were just all about gender identity. They were from the moment they did their submissions. They were against me from the moment of the complaint. They completely captured. And so I just felt like there'd be judicial activism at play, and they would just be like, oh, the Australian Human Rights Commission is saying that. I will just go with that. And
it's the thing, though, the laws that, like when you go to court, they're there to interpret the law, not to see what's right or wrong.
Yeah, it's been the biggest learning experience for me in that, because I definitely did have a lot of trust that things worked better than they do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was just like naivety that I've just existed with for 40 years, but it's been a huge wake-up call in that respect. Like, this whole process has destroyed my trust in institutions completely, and I don't think I'll ever get it back.
No.
I think about it all the time. I'm like, I know that I will never, ever forgive the Australian Human Rights Commission. I wouldn't even waste my time trying. Like, I wouldn't even give them the satisfaction of even trying to forgive them. There's this great Taylor Swift quote, and she's like, you don't need to forgive, you don't need to forget. You just have to become indifferent. That's the personal growth. That eventually you just like, it doesn't matter. Like,
definitely.
And so I think that's where I'll eventually get to, where it will just be, they'll be indifferent to me. Yeah. But I'll never waste a second of my time trying to forgive them.
Yeah, I feel like, because I know you like, we don't know each other, but I know a lot about you. I've been through something similar in my life where my faith in justice was really knocked, and I feel the same. It's just like, how can you trust the people who are supposed to be there to keep people safe and to do the right thing when they change the law?
Exactly.
Like that.
Like, it's weird because I'm 3 years into this now, And by the time it's all finished, there's potential to be about 4.5 years. This will all taken. And how it just psychologically manifests, as much as you try every day to be like, I mean, it'll never break me. Like I've got all the different tools in place to make sure, but there's just these little things that just happen, and it's just part of being human, I think, and you just have to work through it. Things like even the most minor things. I have this like I pause. I pause this gut reaction of like, am I doing something wrong? Because when you have these major institutions, effectively the government telling that you have to see a man as a woman, then when you sit there and like you do something, you're like, oh, well, I get in trouble for doing the correct thing, because the correct thing is seeing a man as a man. That's the correct thing. So you just, and I mean, this is the goal, is the double think is the goal. So you have to just sort of go, no, stop that, go away. And it's just that little bit of extra layer of effort that you have to do. And obviously they want to wear you down. Like that's the whole point. But
well, I just have so much admiration for you to take this all the way, because it must have a massive impact on your life.
Who's turning my life upside down? Actually, I had dinner with my mum and dad tonight, and we were just talking about it. And we're just saying, like for 5 years, because it's coming up to the 5-year anniversary. So we're sort of reminiscing of like this time 5 years ago. It's like this time 5 years ago, I'd never heard the word turf before. I was like blissfully unaware that all of this was happening. I mean, like I wasn't living under a rock. I'd heard that there was such a thing as the T. Like I'd heard LGBT. I'd heard that there was a concept of trans, but I was sort of like being a good little liberal. Like I never thought anything, but I thought I heard it and I was like, oh, well, if it's part of the LGBT, like I trust them. Yep, sure.
I was the same for years, and I didn't realize how much harm it was causing, or it had the potential to cause.
I didn't think anything about it. It was on the 7th of February 2020, when I literally minutes into reading things, it was just men are actually claiming to be women, and I was like, hang on, what? That's what they're saying? Like, that's what all of this be kind is. What? And I just, like, the penny dropped instantly. I was like, if I'd known that a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever before, I would have been speaking out then. Like, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think
it was all under the radar, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think there's so many people like that. Like, even now, because in Australia, like, when I was peaked in 2020, as I said, the political climate was in a completely different place to this. And it had definitely infiltrated Australian institutions. We were some of the first to fall. It was quite crazy. And it infiltrated society. It was all there, but the backlash hadn't yet. And there was a few women who were speaking up, but I mean, they were really speaking into a void. Like, no one was giving them attention. It took me until 2021 to get on the news of begging, of going like, this is what is happening. Can you please hear what is happening? So just in terms of like friends and family, we would tell them what was happening to us, and they looked at us like we had two heads. Like that,
people don't believe it.
You must be making this up. You must have lost your mind if you're saying the government is saying that men are women. And it's like, but I'm telling the truth. And they're like, you've lost your mind. I'm like,
yeah, you've got it wrong. You must have got it wrong.
Yeah. So that was hard to navigate as well. It's been as any woman who is in this fight knows, it's exhausting. Yeah. And we're starting now. I think the zeitgeist has changed. I think the train has left the station.
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic.
Yeah. Certainly in the UK, I think the election that we had in June, all of the vocal women made a big fuss on the run up to the election, and obviously Party of Women as well. And I was part of that, and we all just raised the awareness. And so I think it was one of the biggest issues. Obviously I was in my bubble, but it was immigration and it was women's rights.
I have UK TERFs, I will say, I just have so much admiration for how organized you guys are, and generous with your time and resources. I came to the UK in March last year, and just the women that were like, here, we can organize this, we can do that, and I'm coming again soon. And it's just been the same. And it's just, everyone is just using all of their skills and and helping. And it's just all hands on deck, the most organized of anything I've ever seen.
Well,
It's
that's good to
admirable.
hear.
It's just amazing. Amazing.
I I mean, I was quite late to this as well. I only realised in January 2023, like that was when I started learning. And
But what was your moment? What was your peaking
well,
event?
it was a bit before that, and I saw Kelly J. Keane go viral about having the police at her door for being untoward about paedophiles. My husband saw the clip and he was like, "Have you seen this? Like, what's going on?" I was like, so I tried to find out more, but when Kelly J goes on YouTube, she talks about current stuff. So like I couldn't really work out what it was all about. Um and then a friend that I knew said, "Oh, Kelly J. Keane's coming to Newcastle. Who wants to go?" So that's I went to the event and heard all the women speaking about what was going on. And there was a good variety of speakers. And I was just like, but I still didn't know, because I then went on Facebook and was like, there was this article because Lisa Morgan gave a speech about, she's the hypnotherapist, and she was talking about repetition, and she quoted from Mein Kampf, and that just I was like, oh, they've got it wrong. I'll just put them right. So I was commenting on Pink News, not having a clue what I was getting into. I just didn't know, and I got threatened. I got a message in me messenger saying, "You haven't said it, but you've implied. I'm gonna because I've got a care business. They'd obviously looked me up. I'm gonna go to CQC and tell them." And I was like, what? So then I was quite shocked, and I was like, I think I better back off until I know what's going on. So then I really started digging, and then I went to Glasgow, and yeah, that was an amazing event.
I mean, I did the same thing. Like, what, February 7, 2020 is when I first came under attack. And I did the normal thing as you would do at that time. Like, I mean, I'd never tweeted before, but I had a Twitter. I used to just read stuff, and they were all coming at me, and I was responding. And, I did the thing of like, oh yeah, they're women, like whatever, when you're under that duress, like I was so, like, you're just thinking you can stop it. I'd never been under attack before. So I did all of that. And then I was like, I think it was my dad that went, "Get off stop, close it, stop it." And I was like, okay, I've got to go and research. And so I did. And I didn't actually start speaking out straight away. It took me months, because you've got to, like Kelly J's interview that she did with Trigonometry, the first one, big one, brilliant one, which was one of the best because it broke it down so simply. They're just men. I must have listened to that 50 million times. I would just have it on constantly. And then everything Helen Joyce had done, I would read everything that was being written, listen to everything. Andrew Doyle was another great resource. And I just immersed myself in it. When I would go for a run, I would listen to it. When I would think about it in the shower,
I was the same. It's like an obsession, isn't it? To find out everything you possibly can.
Because what you've got, I think one of the things is they're going on the logic level, it's all settling in. And then you've got to undo any empathy, because you're like, hang on, but the whole thing is be kind. And we all want to be kind. We're all I don't know a person who doesn't want to be kind. Or if I've met one who doesn't, I don't know them. You know what I mean? They're not in your life. They're psychopaths. Every person wants to be kind. And it's untangling that manipulation of your empathy until you go, hang on, they want me to be kind at the expense of being cruel to myself, and by extension, every other woman, but also children, LGBT people, but literally even men, everyone in society, because they're asking us to lie to everyone, to literally live out their delusion so that they can live out their delusion. We've all got to be involved in it.
Yeah.
And it takes a while. You just don't want to think that can happen. You don't want to think that the world could be manipulated like that, or it could be real. You do. I think it's normal to have a resistance to that and question it. I think you should question it. It's why when the sort of new people poke their heads in or something, say something, you don't attack. I'm like, never attack. Because there were some women who did with me, at the very beginning, and it's like, I could handle it in a sense, it was fine. I'm someone who can process that and place it. But some people can get very scared.
Yeah.
off by that. And it's like, no, just it's a process, and it can literally take someone 2 years to
Yeah.
really understand what's going on. Because even, I will say this, wasn't to the Australian human rights complaint that I stopped any form of politeness. Because I still was. I was like, maybe like there's just politeness. Because that's my natural instinct as a
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Like
I think
that's a
that's most
kindness to
women.
me. You can be
Yeah.
polite, you say the truth, but you say it politely. Also, it was that time in Twitter, like pre-Elon days, where you had to be really careful about what you say.
Yeah.
There's sometimes if I see a tweet that I've done in that period of time, I'm like, I don't like her. I don't agree with what I said there. Like I wouldn't say that now. It's far too.
I mean, when I first went to that event in Newcastle, I was like cringing. I was like, oh my God, just seeing all these things. Like, and then I was like, well, hang on a minute. Why am I uncomfortable? Is it false? No, it's the truth. Why am I uncomfortable? And I even was thinking, oh, there's all these police here. Is she going to be arrested for saying all that? And I really had to like work on myself as I was standing there listening to it.
It tests your strength, it tests your confidence, it tests your perception, it tests everything that kind of these very important qualities that make us human.
Yeah.
And still, like every day there is a new test, and every day I think there's nothing more that can shock me, and then something will happen.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. Because even with I've been talking about this with my best friend who lives in America, who's not a public turf at all. We talk, every day about this, and I mean. We met when we lived in New York, and we're both completely unaware of this, but she would have, at the time, she would have classed herself as a very, very progressive leftist. Not anymore. And we were talking to them, and it was like, how did it happen that Trump, who we both despised becoming president in 2020, is now like king feminist? Now, do I think that this man gives a fuck about women's rights overall? No. Do I think he saw a political win? Yes. I don't care if he cares about women's rights. I care if he puts them in law. I don't give a fuck what he thinks about it.
Absolutely.
In his personal life. I think that if anyone has a problem with the fact that it's Trump that did it, don't direct that anger at him. Direct it at the people that allowed that to happen. At the politicians who gave him that win. If you have a problem with everything else.
I think there's still a lot of Americans and people around the world who just don't understand what's happening, and they think that what he's doing is bad, like, oh, he's getting rid of DEI, but they don't understand what lies behind those decisions and why it's good.
Yeah, do you know what? When I back in my I was a screenwriter in Hollywood for 10 years before I did this. I sold some scripts and like, I don't have them made because for most writers never do, but you sell them and like you can live and you live frugally and blah, 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 and you keep going. It was successful. It was horrible. There was a few things. They're called like writers' roundtables, or what they'll have. It's usually for like a pilot script that's at a network, and they'll bring in like a bunch of writers to sit there and like throw around ideas to punch it up, like make it better. Quite often, I'll just bring in a token woman so they can tick the box. There was a woman there. There was a few, and they pay really well, or they'd either pay really well, or you'd get like a really brilliant gift card for like hundreds of dollars somewhere. So you'd leave and you'd sit there for the 4 hours and be like, so the first time I went, or the first few times, I would like throw out ideas and everyone would like dismiss me. And after a while, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to just sit here. I am decorative. You have no interest in me saying anything. I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll take my whatever I'm getting and go and enjoy it. And then eventually it stopped because it was, they want a woman of color, or they want a queer woman, or they wouldn't have said that then because this is at 2016 it stopped for me. So then I think it was like I got one and I was like, oh, they want a lesbian. And at the time I was like, oh, well, if a lesbian woman like makes sense for the script, like, well, okay, fine. Or if like a woman of color makes sense for the script, like, okay, like that's cool. But like, if it makes sense for the script, of course, because that's how like my thought, like, of course it does. But that wasn't, it was just, that was the tokenism that they were ticking up, and they wouldn't have wanted those women to say anything either. So when you've actually been there in a DEI situation and you realize you're just a token person in the room, it's like, no, I want to be here on my merit. Like, I want to be here because you guys like, oh, she's got great ideas. And because I did have great ideas. And
Yeah.
it should have been there based on my merit. But because it was just they changed it to just a token thing. Women weren't getting in based on your ideas. You were only getting in there based on the tokenism. And I don't know how to play that game. I have no instincts with that game. I only know
Well,
how to
no,
play.
I don't think you can play that game.
Yeah, I don't think you can because it's completely rigged against you at that point. So I was really against that, like the tokenism of something before, I suppose before I had heard of all of this sort of stuff. Because even with, say, like I was screenwriting and I would write movies that were about women. And so I would study all of the ones that were coming out, whatever. And there was so much tokenism where I was like, well, I mean, most of the movies about women, they were written by men. And I was like, well, they could be men. Like, for example, there was this movie that came out. It's called Bad Moms. If you remember those movies, I think there's three
No.
of them. Somehow there's three of these pieces of shit. And you watch them and they could be dads. And they're
Yeah.
written by men.
Because men don't really understand women, do they? So how can they write
No.
the character?
And they don't understand motherhood. And so you're just watching
No.
it going, well, mother would never do that. Like, that's just not. It's just, this is just cliche, or a man's interpretation of it. And it's just tokenism where it's like, if you had a woman writing that, well, it would be a much more, and she'd write a very funny movie about being a bad mum, but it would be a very different movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just take the easy way out.
Yeah, I stopped watching all those films and stuff years ago. It's the same sort of formula, isn't it?
Yes. And once you've
Anything
seen
that
those,
comes out, it's the same
just one.
story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just gets boring. And then they made the effects more and more like CGI and yeah.
I mean, yeah, I went through this phase recently. I suppose it hasn't really ended. I watch a lot of things from the 90s, like shows, movies, because I just feel like the last hurrah. Like I watched like As Good as It Gets recently, and then I watched like The Craft and 10 Things I Hate About You, and just like teen movies, but also just like these great movies from the 90s where sort of that pre-techno, like it's just on the cusp of technology, so it's still a lot of interaction. It feels like it's just the last of sort of old-fashioned culture, I suppose.
Yeah. I think that whole sort of sector is kind of imploding now though. It just seems like Hollywood's just not really doing what it used to.
It definitely is. I mean, it was changing when I was there. And again, I didn't realize, I just didn't realize what was going on. So I left Hollywood in 2016. And I went to New York. Then I left the industry completely in 2018. And so now I'm so like, I don't know anything. I have some friends that are still there, but I don't know. I don't really talk to them about it. I don't know that much about it anymore. Just, I see what comes out and I'm like, there's only one show that I've really liked in the last however long, which is, have you watched The Gilded Age?
No, I very rarely watch anything.
Oh my God. Okay, so it's actually by the same guy that did Downton Abbey.
Right. I haven't watched that either.
So I've actually never watched Downton Abbey either. My mum's, but this one is set in the 1880s in New York in the Gilded Age. And so it's like the upstairs, downstairs of, high society in New York. And it's so good. So good.
Okay.
Everyone
I'll have to look out for it.
stop doing this podcast now and go on.
Don't say that. Watch the podcast first.
It's really, really good. It's fun. It's just because it just like sucks you into a world and it feels like old fashioned good storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's where Hollywood's gone wrong then, and now it makes sense. Why? Because they're not accepting diversity of thought or point of view or experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, isn't it? It's just that's true diversity is diversity of thought. And that's one of the, like, I'm sure you realized it too, of like when you saw that, the so-called minorities that these people were saying, the ones that had to be, with them, protecting them was the most important, but anyone from that minority who deviated from their narrative, they shunned them. I was like, but why? Why can't these people, like any person, but you're using these people to prop up this nonsense?
An ideology.
Yes, exactly. So I'm very happy that it feels like the tipping point has happened. We've been waiting for such a long time of being like, is it yet? Is it the tipping point now? I think it has happened now. I think when you have what is the leader of the free world, when he's come in and been like, we're ending this, that takes it to a whole new level. We're in a new era now.
Yeah.
And yes, there is some people, like it's happening in Australia, for example, the narrative now is we don't want to import Trumpian politics. And it's like, well, first of all, biological sex isn't a Trumpian political line. Like it's just reality. And you idiots let him have the win. And two, it's like, but you already have, because you've laid all the groundwork. You've done everything that allowed someone like him to come in. So you have done it. So you can't, when they sit there and go, oh, we don't want to get involved in a culture war. It's like, yes, you do, because you created it. Like in Australia, like, we're not going to get into a culture war. And it's like, well, then you shouldn't have made the amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act if you didn't want to do it.
As if it's like our fault for responding to what they've done.
Yeah. I mean, it's just victim blaming.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
You're just being gaslit by the government. And I'm just like, no, sorry.
It's just a big narcissistic thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Like Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he's a guy, like, how did he become Prime Minister? Like, I just look at him and I just think, like, I wouldn't let you, like, manage a McDonald's. But he, like, even just a branch, like a branch of McDonald's, not even the whole thing. Just like,
I've not even heard of him. I don't know that name.
You're missing nothing. I mean, the guy, I'm sure I couldn't even cook a McNugget, but he came out, he did a tweet today, preemptive of International Women's Month. And it's like, hold your horses, buddy. Like, got a few weeks to go. And like, if you have nothing else to talk about, but it's just like how, we just want to protect women and support women and create fairness for women. Nothing about the fact that women have been erased in law. Nothing about, okay, we're going to make sure that women are defined in law, that no man can be a woman. Nothing about that. No. It's just, we're going to make sure that, you can have great childcare subsidies, which, don't get me wrong, an issue to talk about.
Yeah.
But if you're not defining women, who are you talking about?
Exactly. If you can't define a woman, then you've got nothing else.
And he's going on about violence against women.
That's really shocking here that all the mainstream news has just come out, violence against women and girls has gone through the roof, even though they're trying to reduce it. And I'm thinking, I wonder why that is.
And you go, it's a thing of like, well, okay, so either now you're defining women, that's the only way you could be doing it, and then you're going to use the fact that you have to gaslight everyone that you're doing something, and use that violence against women to distract everybody from getting you to do anything about protecting women's rights and law.
Yeah.
And
this is the thing as well. I was just going to say, like, we've got all these women's organisations, but you don't know which ones are actually for women. Like, there's no way of knowing.
I mean, 100%. In Australia at this point, I mean, if they're getting government money, they're not for women. I mean, because they wouldn't be able to be.
Yeah.
That's the thing in Australia where they're saying, we're for women. You're like, yeah, but it's any organization that's for women that's government funded, you say has to include a man. So how much are you for women?
Yeah. I don't think it's quite as clear cut here, but I'm not sure. It's hard to find out.
It is pretty clear cut here. And I mean, I talked to like Lesbian Action Group. I mean, you would have heard that they have been told, that they've had the decision that, lesbians can't hold events unless heterosexual men are at them. How is this real life? I've talked to Carol Ann, who's one of the head organizers of it, and she's saying, like, they have to go underground. Yeah. How's this progress? And then you have, like, the Premier of the state of Victoria, which is where Lesbian Action Group is based, was media the other day saying, for Pride and make sure that Trumpian politics don't come in to wind back LGBTQIA plus rights. And you're like, yeah, but the L in that and the G, the rights, they've already gone. So they get you gaslighting everyone. And this is why gender ideology has always been, it's a war on language.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate weapon. And because how then the supporters of it, when they come back at you and they just try and confuse you with language, and because they've changed the definitions of everything, and you're like, and you feel like you're upside down, you feel like you're drowning. And so you have to go, that's you have to be so staunch.
Sometimes I
You
just think, where do you even start to challenge what they've just said? It just like,
the thing is, you don't give them an inch. You just
yeah,
go like, no, I like exactly the same as like if like, you know, okay, so you know how like sort of like a normal religious person, you can have like a normal conversation, but you know
yeah,
when you get
yeah,
like full like it's not even, it's beyond evangelical. They're like completely out of their mind, just talking like basically just talking to a cop as they walk down the street kind of person. Where you just like you wouldn't give that person an inch.
no.
It's just,
It's like on social media when like you end up in a TRA bubble, if you like, and then they just all pile on you, and you're just like, I don't even know where to start with that. It's just,
I will say this, you don't. With them, you
yeah,
don't. Because
you just,
they're never who you're trying to convince, because you never will.
no, no,
Most of them are sociopaths, so there's no point. And they just love trying to make you feel crazy. Like that's the joy
yeah,
of a misogynistic psychopath to do that. You're always just trying to talk to the normal, rational people who are just living their lives, who are like, oh, what's going on? Those people are completely easy to talk about because you talk the
yeah,
facts and they go, oh, okay. And that's the majority of human beings.
yeah, yeah,
The ones like crazy on the fringe, because the only ones that are crazy on the fringe who I do care about, who are the young people who are caught up in this. Like I care about
yeah,
them.
absolutely. They're vulnerable, aren't they?
But if you know anything about cults, it's that they're still going to have to come to the realization on their own. There's nothing you can say.
Yeah, yeah. It can be challenging, but I do like the plain talking of Kelly J, and that's what I do. It's a
I
man.
100%. I think
Just say man.
just say man. Oh yeah, and
Yeah,
just one of the things that I say all the time to people with the pronouns thing. If my barrister had walked into the courtroom and said she then has to stand there and explain why that she can't be in a woman's only space.
exactly.
When the only reason he cannot be in there is because he's a he.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's really, I had some quite interesting conversations being part of the election with people in my circle, and I really shocked them. They hadn't heard the other side of the argument. Some of them had like were going along with it and thinking it was completely great, and it was not kind to not go along with it, and they'd come out with all the usual arguments, and I'd say stuff like, well, you do know that trans is quite homophobic, and they were like, silence. It was, they just never heard the
yeah,
other
yeah,
side.
but because it's the thing about how we all heard LGBT and we're like, oh okay, because we all had trust in the LGB, and I still
Yeah,
do, because I don't think that I do not think
absolutely.
it's LGB people's fault. I think it's LGB organizations' fault because they
Yeah.
needed a new cause, but I don't think it's the fault of 99.9% of the actual community.
Um,
And so, yeah,
but
it's the
even
weaponized.
some of that community doesn't see the harm of it, which is
Well, I mean,
confusing.
they just ignored the harm for the money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I was watching a lesbian couple on YouTube the other day, and they were calling themselves queer, but partly I think because YouTube doesn't allow the word lesbian.
And so
Um,
it doesn't allow the word lesbian.
so they had queer in the title, and I think that's why, but I wasn't sure, and I was trying to gauge like where they were. And they were quite young, and I just don't think they understood the harms from the tea.
Does YouTube not allow the word lesbian?
I'm not sure. I think like I haven't had any problems with any words so far that I've used, but I know that some of the bigger channels won't, like, they'll beep out certain words because once you
Yeah,
get
I know
bigger,
that.
they check you.
I know, like say Andrew Golan heretics. He calls them
Yeah,
PDF files. I think it's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of yeah, but I mean that would, if the word lesbian was being banned, I mean that would be, we should find
I'm
that
not
out.
sure if that's the
Yeah,
reason, but yeah, they were using the word queer, and they did mention lesbian, and and that's
I
what they
know
all
that
call
there.
themselves, the young people.
Yeah, I know that there are some younger lesbians where the theory is that they are sort of calling themselves queer because from their perspective, lesbian has become a porn category.
Yeah.
It's just something that men are fetishizing. And so they're wanting to get away from that. And so I understand that. Like, I completely understand that. For the young girls, for example, who are caught up in this, like, there's a huge part of me that understands why they are. Like, being a teenage girl right now, whether you're autistic or not, whether you're lesbian or straight, what you're going through, just seeing that, like, the Instagram version of women that's being thrown at you, the OnlyFans version of women that's being thrown at you.
Yeah.
Then there's like this sort of seemingly golden ticket out of it. Like, I get it that in their young minds, why they go like, I get why they're seeing that and going, I don't want that.
I think it's that gaming thing as well. So a lot of them have grown up with games, and then
Yeah.
you can be interchangeable on
Yeah.
a game, and they
Mhm.
don't seem to realize that it's not true. And in real life, you can't do
Yeah,
that.
they're not grounded. Like, I remember when I went to therapy, when I came back from Hollywood and I went to therapy, the big thing that we went through was like that when you feel really anxious or detached from yourself or the world, it's grounding yourself. Just taking a moment to like take in your surroundings, take in reality and ground yourself. I think that's been one of like my saving graces in the last 5 years of having that tool at my disposal to be able to do it. And you're like, maybe something like that would be helpful to be taught in schools
Yeah.
rather than queer theory.
It's horrifying what they're teaching in schools. And then,
I
like, you
yeah,
talk to teachers and things, and they're like, well, they should find out about people who have differences. And I'm like, they don't need to know about sex, like, in
well,
that much detail when they're young.
but also because it's that thing like I mean, we had like sex ed when I was growing up. I mean, there was just one class like in
Yeah.
1 year. It
It's
was
like
like I'm
science,
talking,
wasn't it?
it was like yeah, I'm talking like this was like an hour out of my entire schooling. Where it was sex segregated. It was boys in one class, girls in the other, and we were taught about sex, what it was, um, and periods,
Yeah.
basically. And I couldn't tell you what the boys were taught about because I wasn't in the class.
No.
It was quite really from my memory. It was sort of quite inoffensive and just really normal. It was just teaching you like the really basic facts. Because if you imagine if like they're getting into any sort of other details, you'd be like, your teacher's telling you this, you're like, well, sometimes this is really uncool. Which maybe that's a
Well,
way to
that was
stop
uncomfortable
doing it.
anyway. Just the facts was
Yes.
uncomfortable. So going into detail about stuff that you don't need to know, it's just,
Also, like, yeah, I have a daughter, and so once you have these, like, do you have kids?
yeah.
Yeah, and once you have kids, like, you think about these things differently because you're not just thinking about when you were one, you're now thinking of raising one, and you're like, no, that stuff's for no one else to explain to her but me.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
job because I've got to protect her. I teach her morals. Like when by the time she goes to school, teach her the stuff that I can't teach her, which is maths and science.
Yeah.
Useless.
Absolutely.
I do wonder at what point I will no longer be able to help her with maths and science homework.
Oh,
My
well,
prediction
yeah.
is grade
So,
4.
so all of mine are adults now, and that it's quite young when you can't help them because they do everything so differently now.
I was saying to
And it doesn't make sense to me the way they teach math.
yeah, I was no, I was saying to my friends the other day, I was like, I'm kind of excited to finally learn long division. Like maybe now as an adult it'll click. I'll go because I never learned it the first time round.
No.
It'd be cool to do school again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm very conscious of her education, and if if the uh, if this stuff is all in schools, like she's just not going to a school where it is. It's as simple as that. No way.
It's really difficult to find. I know that the home education sector, like
It's,
communities growing here.
yeah, it's not. I've never said I'd be someone who thought this way, but it's not off the table for me. But at the same time, like I'm lucky just in terms of how it's going. She's only 2, she's 2.5. The time she goes to school, I think we're going to be in a better position. If the guidelines haven't completely and the curriculum hasn't completely changed, then at least my position to be able to object to it, I think will be accepted better than what it might be even today.
Yeah, I really think that the changes that are happening in America, it's going to affect everywhere. And actually, I think it's happening quicker than I thought. I am
Completely. I
seeing
mean, America
things.
sets the zeitgeist. And in a way, and this is not to take away like from all the work of Turf Island, because Turf Island really is the epicenter of the fight on this. But in terms of what was going to really reset the zeitgeist, it's always going to be America, purely because America does set the cultural zeitgeist. It just does. Like
Yeah,
America exported this, it was always going to be the one that would have to fix it. Like
it's so big, isn't it?
it just
America.
does. And so like I'm not shocked in that respect. It's just, I suppose, in a way, you're shocked in the sense of that you're grateful, and you just go like, and then when you're living in a country where it just hasn't trickled to yet, and they're being trying to be so resistant of it, you're just like, oh, for God's sakes, come on!
Hmm.
Like, just they're not women, they're men. Look at them.
Yeah, you just have to look at them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I literally did.
So, what's next for your situation? Is it
So
another court case?
yes, so basically, so we're in the appeal now. So this appeal is to the full federal court first, not the high court yet, because there are so many inaccuracies in the judgment, and you have to clear them up before you go to the high court. So we have the first case management hearing actually next week, 12th of February. One of the things that we'll decide is whether so basically Tickle has cross appealed. So I'm appealing the decision. He is also appealing the decision that he won.
I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense.
He wants it upgraded from indirect to direct discrimination, and he wants it increased, the damages increased to, I think it's at least $30,000 or at least $40,000? I can't remember. And then aggravated damages of at least $10,000. So that will be addressed in the case management hearing next week. Plus, there's been that people have intervened. So the AHRC has intervened once again. It's like, what are you doing here? You've stated your case. So we're saying no to them. The Australian Christian Lobby has intervened on our side. And their submission is fantastic. Like, they actually led with sex-based rights. They make all the great arguments. And then the religious thing, like, obviously there are religious women, Christian, Jewish and Muslim and Hindu women who require sex-based rights, and they address all of that. In the event that the Australian Christian Lobby is not allowed to intervene, probably the only reason why it wouldn't be allowed is if they're actually just making the same arguments that we are. So you have to intervene, you have to be making a different point of law. Like the Australian Human Rights Commission, why they could intervene in the first round is because they have a statutory right to be amicus curiae. They weren't intervening sort of as a party. But other people, when you're intervening as a party, it has to be at a different point of law. Otherwise, you could have a 3-week long case where everyone is just standing up there saying the exact same arguments. That can be boring.
Yeah.
So if some of our interveners, because there will probably be more, if they aren't allowed, it's not necessarily a scandal. It's that
it's just a process.
It's just the process, and that there are limited arguments here in terms of, because you're just arguing for facts. So there's just really limit, like you just.
How long does it say? How long does it take to say he's a man?
Seconds. I can tell you that. I've wasted 3 years saying all these seconds. So then the actual hearing is likely to be in August, because the full federal court, which is 3 judges, they meet 3 times a year, I think it is. Well, this year it's 3 times. I think sometimes I went back before, I'm not sure. But anyway, so one of the times is March. The next one is sort of July, August. Did I say April or August? Yeah, July, August. And then I think the last one is later in November or something. So ours is likely to be in August, be a few days. The cross appeal has will extend it from what would have either been like a 1 or 2 day hearing to maybe a 3 or 4 day hearing. And there'll be a decision maybe in December or early January, hopefully December, so we can end the year with a decision.
Yeah.
In the event that we were to lose this round again, we will then have 28 days to appeal to the High Court. And that's when it will be full-on challenging the law, which we've been doing all along. But once you get to the High Court, it's just like gloves off at that point.
So I think we're probably expecting it to go to High Court then, because it's the law that's the problem.
No, I fully expect it to go to the High Court, but I am optimistic. Sometimes I think that it won't be me that's the one taking it to the High Court. see. We'll see. I mean, if it's me that does it, okay. But I don't know, as I said, like I never anticipated to win the first round, not because we weren't trying, it's just because I was like, it's just not there. But like just the climate and the AHRC, I just was like, they're just going to listen to them and they're captured.
Yeah.
In this round, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, look, like if they turn and say again, oh, yeah, men and women, I'll be like, okay, fine. See you in the high court. But
Yeah.
I remember when we walked into the room for the decision of the last round, remember we sat down, you know, you feel sick. Like it's such a horrible experience. The judge came in and the first thing he said was, I find the terms cis and trans useful. And I turned to my dad and I went, lost.
Yeah.
Because if you'd listened to a word we said, you wouldn't.
Yeah. I've got a, like, just a really visceral, is that the right word? Response to the word cis. I just hate it.
Same, I hate it. I hate it.
Visceral, that's the word I meant.
Even sometimes when sometimes when you have to use it without you making points, you have to be like cis women or something. I'm just like, even just then, I hate even saying
Yeah.
I'm not a subclass of my own sex class.
I know.
But yeah, no. So like, I knew we'd lost in the first 20 seconds of him speaking, 10 seconds of him speaking. But I don't know. I think that, I don't know. I'll sort of like, I'll just be quietly optimistic in this one, but also realistic. Like I understand that ultimately what has to be changed is the law.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work. Like if the law, like this situation shouldn't even happen in a law, in a legislation that worked. This situation that I'm in wouldn't exist.
Yeah. That's like arguing that the sky's blue, but you're not allowed to say it is, and you have to pretend that it's not.
Yeah, but you know, it's even crazier than that because you know what? Sometimes the sky isn't blue.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's black. Sometimes it's pink. Sometimes it's orange. True. They're always men.
And so exactly.
It's so that's change. It's Richard Dawkins explained it so well one time when he really started to get into this, and he said like the uniqueness of biological sex is that it's binary. That most things in the universe exist on a spectrum. Like when does day become night? When does young become old? When does up become down? When does, just anything. Anything.
Yeah.
Male and female are so distinctly separate.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so interesting. And just sit here and lie about what and destroy one of the most, or try to destroy one of the most uniquely brilliant things in existence. How dare they?
Yeah.
I just, we can't let them get away with it. So we continue to fight.
No, definitely not. So are you still raising money for all the illegal costs and things like that?
Yeah, we were raising this money into a day.
So if you send me all your links, I'll put them in the description so that people can find you. Well, they'll probably already know you more than me, but yeah.
Thank you.
But it's useful to have that link in there so people can donate.
Thank you. And when we raised, I think it was the first round was like $540,000. We raised it, and it was the generosity of people from all around the world. And for me, like I've never gone to big donors or anything like that. I'm not like interested in it because I would rather say, even if you raise millions or whatever, I'd rather, like 100,000 people giving $10. For me, it's the engagement of people being aware and everyone having ownership and going like, this is all of us, rather than like, you know what I mean? I just think
no one person's responsible for getting rid of it. It's everybody's responsibility.
And I think that, it's no one has to sit there and be like, oh, I can't give a big amount. It's like, I mean, and if you can't give like anything, like it's like, just tell people about it. Like that is invaluable just as much. Like telling people about it so people are aware of whether it's this case or just the issue in general. Like literally like $5. I want a case that's built on $5 because I want that's the amount of people that are invested in making sure that women are in law.
Yeah, absolutely.
That to me is
definitely.
the most important thing.
But even just saying the name of the case, like Tickle versus Giggle, it just sounds ridiculous.
Kelly, I was a
Make
screenwriter,
it up.
and if I had written a script about gender ideology and sex-based rights, and I had called a central court case in it Tickle v. Giggle, the first creative exec note would have been, no. No one will
Nobody will
believe
believe it.
that is
Uh-huh.
far too on the nose. That is ridiculous. Why would you call it that? And so, like, just, I do sometimes sit there going, like, how on earth is this my life? It's so stupid. It's like I'm in a puppet show.
Well, at least you can still laugh.
You
That's the way
have
to do
to.
it, isn't it?
You have to. Otherwise, you'd go crazy. You have to. You have to be able to laugh at it. It's the most
Definitely.
important thing. Yeah, no, because it is funny, and I will forever laugh at a man who claims to be a woman because it is absurd. So,
Well, Sal, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. We've been
thank you
going
so
for
much
about
for
an
having
hour,
me.
so
Thank you so much
and
for having me. It's been lovely.
I've really loved talking to you.
Thank you, and I will be in the cold UK next week, and I'm petrified about how
Yeah, you're very,
cold it is.
yeah, it is cold because obviously it's winter. The sun is shining today though, and we'll get some lovely. I live right on the coast, so every morning I go for a walk down to the bottom of my street where the sea is, and I get the lovely sunrises. So the sun is really big at the moment in the morning.
Okay. What time does the sun set at the moment?
It's getting later. It's about, oh, I'm not sure. It's starting to get dark at 5 o'clock when I finish work usually,
Okay,
but it's not
that's
pitch
doable.
black like it has been. Yeah.
Okay, that's doable. No, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to come to Turf Island next week. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome, and I hope you have a lovely time.
Thank you so much.